Hello, welcome to our new channel, Old Man Speaks. We got a different take that we're going to come with Old Man Speaks because we're actually going to speak on a lot of topics. We're actually going to speak on things that, a lot of these people don't address, won't address, maybe too scared to address. I don't know. Those things are in question. But we need to, it's an understanding that needs to be brought. That's why I guess I stumbled over my words a little bit at that time because it's a lot to be said. That's why Old Man Speaks. So a little bit about me. As far as being known in Atlanta, I'm known as Silk. Everybody knows me as Silk, Greenbrier Mall, Giorgio's, all that. I spent over 25 years in Greenbrier Mall. I have a history in Southwest Atlanta. I worked at 559, and did security for like a year. I made sure that I continue to handle my business and be respected, not just in the community, but in the various hoods. At Kimberly Court, Boeing Homes, Jonesboro South, Pittsburgh. So all those things and all those people that I came through this city to know. So when I get into speaking about the topics like what has happened with the indictments with Young Gunna and Thug, it really kind of hits home because some of these cats, like themselves, I know some of their family members. So it makes a difference because it becomes personal. It becomes real personal to see how things can turn. Because I had other people that got indicted on charges, got indicted for things, and I didn't even know some situations that they got basically falsely accused, set up, what have you. But see, we're going to really touch on all this stuff because it needs to be addressed. It needs to be touched. It needs to be brought forth, especially from someone from the ATL, with an ATL perspective. Someone that spent a time in the SWATs legitimately. So what I'm getting into, again, is the indictment of Young Thug and Gunna and YSL and whatnot. I know a lot of the street activity and the things that have went on. Many things were brought to me in the discussions I've had in Giorgio's while I was working there for some odd 20 years. So when you look at what has happened and throughout the city, throughout the years, especially when it came in with old Dusty Joe Biden bringing in and also Bill Clinton bringing in laws and infractions that put a lot of brothers away for a long period of time and took them from their families. Those things were affected greatly in Atlanta. Those things really hit Metro Atlanta hard. Indictments against the pimps, indictments against all the different factors that made Atlanta. Atlanta was great because we had the Freaknik, we had all these things. But see, when you start breaking down something for political stardom and political scale, then it changes the dynamics. But when you talk about unification and black people and this and that, I felt home when I moved here in 1989. Now, this place is looking very foreign to me because most of the time that if you turn on TV, anything that you hear about Atlanta has to be something negative or a political scale angle like voter fraud or other things that is like off base when there's so much history and so many things that have went on through the years in Atlanta. Now, saying that, I must say this. I got to get into Fani Willis, the district attorney, because the funny thing about it, when she came, when the indictments came forth, she jumped on it like a fat kid jumping on a big fat piece of cake. She jumped on it, and I had to look and research and look into her history and say, well, wait a second. I thought it was, let's stick together. Black people need to stay together, this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that for her not to do her job. But when I start looking to timelines and start looking to how they really dealt with the situation, why the indictments right now? This case has been under a 10-year investigation. The previous district attorney, for those that may not know, his name was Paul Howard. And he sat in 2-decade terms, 2 terms as the district attorney. That long. And all the different things that went on in Atlanta. But the twist with his history is there's allegations of corruption, sexual misconduct, misuse of grant funds, So I guess he wasn't the best option to bring those indictments forth. So now we go back to Fani Willis. Now this woman, age 50, is from Los Angeles, California. So I would like someone to please explain how an LA resident that only been here for 16 years really and was a prosecutor for 10 of those 15 years, was a prosecutor here in Atlanta. Why now did they pull these indictments? And it's even more of a question to me, being an assistant manager at Giorgio's for all those years, when they used to break into the store. And the last major break-in we had, there were 2 SUVs in the store. They crashed through the wall. A major news story that should have really went nationwide for the impact that it had on our store itself, but on also the environment that it affected in Southwest Atlanta. So when I say it hits home, it hit home. It hits home. But it's funny how that didn't get the attention and the research for us being an independent store, for us being a store that was homegrown from work and hard work and brought something to not only Greenboro Mall, but the Southwest community. Giorgio's has 2 locations, D&K's and all that, and has given a lot back to the community. So therefore, when you look at a Fani Willis and you look at these people that come into the city, and they come into the city, and the first thing that was said when the indictments was brought forth, which is kind of comical, the first thing you say is you're going to attack the gang activity that happens in Atlanta. So if you're attacking the gang activity that's happening in Atlanta, wouldn't you first conquer where you're from? Oh no, you don't want to mess with the M13s and the Bloods and the Crips. You don't want to mess with the Pyros. You don't want to mess with none of them. But you want to come and focus on what happens in Atlanta and reside, because this is where you live, that's fine. But it does bring a political question that, again, please explain. There's going to be those out there like, oh, you're attacking a black woman. No, it's not about attacking a black woman, but it's funny to me that when I looked and did the research, excuse me for that too, but when I did the research and looked into it, I'm questioning the fact that, hey, why wasn't this done under Paul Howard? But when I looked into his history, those are things that can be attacked when you under allegations, especially for sexual misconduct, allegedly, and also misuse of grant funds, allegedly. So when you look into those things like that, you can't have that as your forefront runner in terms of handling an indictment such as this scale, such as this magnitude. But when you look at Fani Willis, she was the one that was prominent prosecutor on the Atlanta public school cheating scandal. In 2018, she was the primary prosecutor, one at least. So when you look at in those things that when you do the timelines, that was one of the major cases. Then let's go and fast forward a little bit and look into the case of what is accusatory voter fraud. And the fraud is deemed to say that a former president tried to affect the voter situation here in Georgia, and there's charges being pressed, and she's also one of the prosecutors on that case. Now those are 2 prominent cases. Happy for you. But now this third case is a case of not only concern in terms of the direction that they're taking on a lot of these young people, young men in particular, in the rap game, but also it brings into question, what's your real motive? This has to be a political motive behind this to some degree, because why is she so amped up to go after the gangs, to go after this, to go after that, and she's going to make sure that they receive the necessary time for all the attempted allegations of murder that went down in the city. We're going to shut down YXL. You know, I'm paraphrasing, and I may not use a word for word, but definitely what I'm saying, I can stand on. But see, we don't want to address those things because we don't want to face truth and reality. Those things, again, I said, please explain, because it brings into question, why you put forth on this? Because in my mind, it's a third major case. A third major case gives political clout, it gives you political support, You can't come and attack a black woman. You can't say nothing about a black queen. You can't say nothing about a black woman, which is fine. That's people's feeling. But if we're so unified and so let's look out for each other and so black and so connected, then we need to look beyond just saying that, okay, these young men were accused of various crimes and drug sales and possible takeouts throughout the city. And you know what I mean by takeouts, let's not get foolish. But takeouts throughout the city, then you need to be very, I would say, meek when you come in terms of facing the camera about what your intentions are. I'm not saying as a prosecutor, you should hold back as a DA, because in part, that's your job. But in a city such as Atlanta, in the history that I know, a history that when I was out there really hanging out in the streets, Magic City, Blue Flame, all the different clubs that we had, strip clubs throughout Atlanta, it put privy to a lot of things that went on and a lot of transactions and a lot of everything that went on in this city. So again, you have to know this city. This is a heartland city of people that really are connected, really are, even if we had differences and beefs, to work in 559, I had to orchestrate a beef and attitudes and all this stuff as a security guard. I had to really, and the rest of my security peers, which the amazing men and women, had to do a superior job in a club in Southwest Atlanta, particularly at the West End. It doesn't exist no more, but when it did, ask anybody over the age of 40 about that location. And the reason I brought that up is to show that this city is very particular in how it moves, because on a Tuesday night, Bruce will host comedy night. Jonesboro South will show up. Decatur will show up. East Atlanta, West Atlanta, South Atlanta, and throughout the city would show up. And we had to regulate, but it was a certain amount of respect and peace, as long as nobody got out of line. So having that type of base and having that type of history in such a prominent city, you can't just come in the city and orchestrate about what you're gonna do. Well, it didn't take long for it to turn around to which basically almost apologies were rendered by Fani Willis. She almost came forth and apologized once death threats and other things were said and brought towards her in reference to this indictment. So it was some air taken out of that cell simply because now I'm getting threatened. Now my life's on the line. But it was something that really came from her that really struck me was the fact that it was like, well, why? It's the question of, who you think, brought these threats towards you. And it's like, well, I don't think it was one of any of the YXL members. It wasn't, it might not have been them. It was people that want to, associate themselves with or, be down with, but I don't think it's them. Well, why wouldn't, and I'm not saying that it was or wasn't or it has to be, but all of a sudden, that gun-ho, I'm gonna get him, became a little different. And it's funny how it becomes a little different when things become shaky for you. And especially when you have to move in the city in which you live. So what I'm saying is, during this process, people need to be careful about their words, what they say against people, how they say it. Because again, this is my second hometown. I'm originally from Syracuse, New York. But I've been down here since 1989, which has been a longer time. If you can do the math, I came here when I was 21 years old. And I'm going on the 35th year of being in Atlanta soon. So, because time goes by so fast. So saying that, hey, that gives me some clout of 34 years to sit there and say, yeah, this is my home. And until the day I die, as far as I know, this will always be my home. And I'm really protective of it. And that's why I did this video. Old Man Speaks is gonna represent for those that our channel represents of those that we care about, those that are considered mainstream, the underdog, those that really need that type of support. Regardless of what the subject matter is, we're going to go hard at it. That's what Old Man Speaks is going to be about. It's going hard at subjects to really dove and make people have questions on their mind, not just sitting there going, well, okay, the TV said that, this case and they did this and they did that. To come across information that today that somebody tried to make a video and they posted a video saying that, well, Young Thug threatened Gunna to say, tell Gunna not to snitch. So let me get this right. Two men that not only know each other in the reference of growing up in the same city together, coming across the same circles, meeting and also producing much music together, and also befriending and creating an entity themselves within themselves in terms of building and help building, which Gunna did in his own way, YSL. You're going to tell me that he got to send that to somebody to tell Gunna that? For real? The integrity is within a man. So nobody has to be told to have integrity or what a person do. And I can vouch for Gunna because I know some of his people. And the integrity is already there. So many things gonna be said, rumors gonna be put out, and things gonna be said that this one might have snitched, this one's gonna do this one's gonna do that. Yeah, people try to save their butt when they get in tight situations, but trust me, and the trust I know, that these are not the guys and the men that are from that such families and such people, and we stand strong in Southwest Atlanta. I'm not saying that just because it's a Swatch, nobody ever snitched. But what I am saying is that there's some integrity in Southwest Atlanta. So, look into these things. Don't take all these things for granted, because going back to Fani Willis, doing the research, hey, this woman's 50 years old. She's been in Metro Atlanta for 16 years. She was a former prosecutor for those 10 years, all those things. And to have that encompass history, you would think you would do your research on the city that you reside. I think you will have some type of interaction with the community, that you will have your ear more to understanding what this place means. Because, when you look even on sites as Wikipedia, they got it listed as biography, which is a description of the person, 2020 election influence investigations, which she's one of the prosecutors on that case, alleged case. And then it says Atlanta gang indictments. And then after that, references. So again, I don't think I was too off base. I must reiterate, those were the three major cases. The only thing that's not directly mentioned is the school system case. So I understand, get the corruption out of the city. Handle the city, this and that. But it's funny that there's everyday shootings, everyday killings. There's just been a shooting at Walmart. There's just been a shooting at the Publix. There's just been a shooting at Quick Trip. So if the work is to stop all this activity, in particular gang activity, and the guy at Quick Trip got held up. He got carjacked with 3 people carjacking him. And then when he tried to fight against, they shot him directly, I guess, around his head or upper torso, shot and killed the man. So, again, I bring in the question, I ask people to please explain, and that's going to be one of our offset channels that's going to directly question, to sit there and say, please explain. And what that really means is that things that come forth out of my mouth, I investigate and look into. I don't just speak arbitrarily. The thing is this, please explain if anything I say you feel deemed as wrong or incorrect. If you feel that whatever I said is not right, then please explain it back to me. Then the comment section, please explain back to me when we start to have communications through phone and what have you. Bring those things forth. Because one, that also builds us up and builds the channel up for us to understand the topics and the things that we need to discuss, and more interaction with the people that enjoy our content. So we're going to break this into segments and parts, because again, I wanted to dove into and leave on people's mind that, look, you had 2 particular people, both being black, that has a history in this city, which is Paul Howard. But the funny thing about it, the indictments wasn't done under his watch. And you got a short-term person that's been in the city and it's under her term with other how can I say this without getting myself in trouble? Basically, other things that can give you possible further clout in your political chase in which your future can build from, possibly. I don't want to seem, presumptuous and say in a direct way, but, in terms of just kind of covering subject matter, we're going to be covering things here that people don't feel maybe, again, a need to cover. And we're going to bring questions that need to be questioned on this end of the spectrum. Thanks so much for listening to Old Man Speaks. Because, like I said, we're going to speak on topics, and whether you want to refer to me as Old Man Speaks, or you want to take my name that people know me throughout the city, Silk, that's all good and fine. But we're going to bring the truth. We're going to bring the truth, and anything that needs to be updated and whatnot and corrected, because, hey, being human, you make mistakes at times. But we're going to try to take the attitude of Rakim. We got to move the crowd, so therefore we got to damn near be flawless. And that's what the producer and I, we're going to bring that to the table. So thank you so much for listening to the first part to this whole question of what has went down, why these indictments now, why Young Gunna, why Young Thug, why their organization YXL all of a sudden, because my feeling is this, to be honest, and I'll make this brief, is that I think there's more indictments going to come throughout the city. And so therefore, to offset the rest of this, we're going to also bring a whole video talking about the fact that rappers need to be very conscious of what they say on the damn rhyme. It's funny that Key and Peele did a whole little video on a rapper sitting there telling everything that he did, everybody that he killed, everything that they said through a rhyme. They mocked it. So you got to consider about what you say on wax, because words have power. So again, thank you for watching Old Man Speaks. Keep tuning in. Hit the like button. Definitely subscribe. Have our subscriptions build up so we can continue to grow and continue to bring content that I'm sure you will enjoy. Get the views up, share, because again, we want to have a community of discussion, a community that we come together and talk. Not come together with I feel like and I believe like and all this other garbage, but come together and talk and be truthful and bring questions. Because one thing I've learned in this life, just because a person shares a skin tone with me, doesn't mean that they share who I am, that they share who they're supposed to be in terms of sharing that skin tone, which should be a brotherhood, but it's so much that shows that stabbing your back doesn't take that much, because killing happens every day. Thanks again for checking in on Old Man Speaks. Have a blessed day, night, evening, whatever time that you watch this. Thanks again for tuning in. Peace.